Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Menger Institute podcast. Today we have a very special guest. He's a dear friend of mine. He is a philosopher, host of the Haman Nature show. He's a libertarian and a professional poker player. Please welcome Adam Haman. Adam, how are you doing?
I'm awesome. Real good to see you, Matt. I suppose I should address the elephant in the room for those of you consuming this wonderful product with the video turned on. I don't normally look like I've been stung in my face by 1,000 angry hornets or punched in the face by midgets with raspberry jam spread on their fists. I went to the dermatologist, and dermatologists, it turns out, are hilarious. And so I'm going to look like this for a couple of weeks, which I think is hilarious. And then my face will be nice and healthy. So I got that to look forward to. How are you doing, man? It's been far too long.
I'm doing really well. It's nice to see you. I
And
don't
you.
I don't care what you look like. I want to just talk to you.
So I'm glad you have a podcast. Is this your own enterprise, or is it a Menger Institute vehicle? What are we on?
Yes, so we're on the Menger Institute podcast. The last time I saw you, you met Darren,
Hmm.
the founder and president of the Menger Institute, and myself at Freedom Fest. We're actually going back to Freedom Fest this
I'll see
year.
you there. I'll see you
Awesome,
there.
awesome. Um, can we put your name down? Because we can have a our own workshop if we have like 10 people that come to Freedom Fest, like our own Menger Institute workshop where we can teach people economics.
Oh, sure. I mean, I want to help, but I want to make
Okay.
sure it doesn't conflict with anything else we're doing because the Libertarian Party of Nevada is giving Freedom Fest a bunch of volunteers to help with the in-room sessions and gatekeep and this and that and the other. I don't think my name's going to be a part of that, so it's probably okay to put me down for whatever you're talking about. But
Okay.
just as long as there's no conflict, yeah, I'll do whatever you want, man.
Okay. Well, we're friends with Mark. Mark is part of the Menger Institute faculty,
Oh,
so
perfect,
I'm sure it'll be good.
perfect. Yeah,
But
you got a lot of studs. Do you have Bob Murphy on?
we've had Bob Murphy lecture for us. We've had David Gordon lecture for us.
Oh, wow,
We've had David Friedman lecture for us.
wow,
Yeah, we have Walter Block lecture, Thaddeus Russell. We had Michael Humer. We have a great
wow.
faculty.
That's awesome.
Yes. And so you met us right at like our inception when we first like pretty much advertised ourselves at Freedom Fest 2 years ago. And so we just finished our third cohort, and
Nice.
we had about 40 students, but like over like 115 applicants around the world. So they've been loving the program, and we're about to start a course on anarchy.
Aha.
And
You don't
so
you don't give them a time or place, right? You just
no,
you don't organize it at all, right?
well, what do you mean?
I'm kidding.
Oh,
Because anarchy means chaos.
right, exactly. Yeah, it's gonna be I think a 1 month or 2 month program, a 1 month program every weekend, Saturday for like 3 hours.
I love that. Yeah, the structure of what anarchy would look like, because there's a lot of different possibilities. That's what's so great about property rights and the freedom of association. We have an idea of what legal structures would emerge, but we don't really know. The Amish would want to live one way. A bunch of people in urban situations would want to live a different way. And I'm sure, or I hope you agree with me, that there wouldn't be any geographical homogeneity required. You can have overlapping legal structures and contracts and security arrangements with a bunch of different people living in the same area, as long as the whole thing is so everybody knows and there's some coordination going ahead of time about how you adjudicate disputes between members who have different security companies with legal apparatuses. And I think that's the future for human flourishing. If we nation states, maybe it was necessary, but we can't let it be a cul-de-sac for human legal organization. Otherwise, it's just a dead end. Uh, Prosperity requires non-monopoly for important things like security and law, the 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 use, the deployment of physical force for rejection of armies coming to get us. And none of these things should be provided by a monopolist. Monopolies suck at providing goods and services. Doesn't economics teach us that?
Yes. And that's one thing I think people on the left struggle with, where they say, yeah, a monopoly is bad. That's a product of capitalism. But
Mhm.
yet it's the government that is the biggest monopolist. They're a political monopolist.
Yeah, for people who haven't studied history deeply, I'm sympathetic to that view because every horrible crony collaboration between big business and government, it looks like it's the evil capitalist pulling the strings, and it's like it's difficult to let them know. It's like, yeah, but that doesn't have to be that. Just remove the government part, and then what are you left with? The guy making you an offer? You can just say no. But when he's in bed with the government with all the guns, you can't say no. Now he's just got all your resources, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah. It's super interesting. They have a screenshot of the Gilded Age and they think, yeah, this is
Yeah.
exploitative labor. And I'm just I'm just amazed by their thought process.
Essential reading for anyone trapped in that mindset is, I think his name's Bert Folsom, the Myth of the Robber Barons. I think that's the title. Great little book. And yeah, it will disabuse you of the notions that it's capitalism that confers too much power, quote in quotes, over economic resources. No, it's the marriage of them with the government. And if you just think, well, why don't we just not allow that? We'll have a government with tons of power. After all, you need a big, powerful government to ward off powerful economic interests, right? Just recognize, look at history. It's always the people with all the money that control the government. It's always been that way. You're never going to be able to have a political mechanism for distributing resources and power and rules and not have that being taken over by the people with the most economic power. You've built a machine to be oppressed with. You shouldn't do that.
Mhm. So when someone hears this, I think the wrong question is, okay, show me an example where a society without the government has worked before. But that's the wrong, like, empirical question. I think a better question is, where and when do you think this will come about in the future?
Right.
And
That is a better
I want to
question.
ask you.
Um, you got a lot of examples of what anarchy kind of looked like in the Old West before the governments had sort of gotten there. People were out there with economic interests, and they needed to have social rules, norms, and their own improvised legal systems. So any area where the government hasn't got to yet, I think there's a chance to see anarchy work. So now, I don't know, the bottom of the ocean, maybe space, maybe the moon. I don't know. You get a little bit of that in, I guess, in orbit. I don't know if any one nation can take control of satellites in orbit and things like that. And depending on your view of how things are going to play out in the next couple of decades, maybe right here, because empires collapse, and ours sure looks like it's overextended. And if we don't have a currency collapse, I don't see how we can avoid it. We are going to at least have that military overextension collapse. That's already happening. Our inability to control the Straits of Hormuz shows that. The myth of unassailable American military might has gone poof. It's evaporated. And, you know, the yay, my team side, me goes, uh-oh, that's not good. But the freedom loving side of me goes, no, that's great. We are hurt here at home by an empire that makes enemies of Americans abroad. Oh, and it steals our money and makes us targets for terrorism. And I forget who said it, but it is literally impossible to have a globe spanning empire at home and have liberty, I mean, abroad and liberty at home. That mechanism will control the populace if 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 for no other reason than to take their resources and maybe conscript their men into the military to fight it. So empire bad.
Hmm. I completely agree. I think from our own ash and rumble rubble of a crumbling empire, we have the seeds to actually have freedom come out of it. And
I think you're dead right. Like a phoenix arising from the ashes. I think that's what's going to happen. But what's required is for guys like you and me to never shut up about what liberty is supposed to look like in the absence of an overarching and oppressive government. And we need to build up the institutions that are necessary, social institutions that to take over for the government apparatus when it just isn't doing the job anymore. And in a lot of places, that apparatus doesn't work anymore. I mean, how many urban areas do the cops just not go into anymore? You know, to save their own lives, if for no other reason. I mean, it's the old joke. Somebody comes and steals your car out of your driveway. What does the cop do? Solve the crime, get your car back? No. They roll up, write a report, and go, "Gosh, that's a shame. Sure hope you have insurance." Aha, insurance. That's a thing that'll exist if we don't have a monopoly government. Maybe we should think more about how to strengthen that economic relationship because this government monopoly just ain't doing it. It can't do it.
Hmm. Yeah. So let's get into some of the serious matters at hand. Let's begin with money and monetary policy. And I think when you're talking about, what institutions we need to build up to facilitate this evolution towards a freer society, I full-heartedly believe it's going to come with the separation of state and money production. And in the technological age that we're in, perhaps it's Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies or other forms of mediums of exchange that can come along and help facilitate a smoother, easier transition from this fiat dollar system that we're on. Um, but yeah, in the short term, it's it's so broken that it kind of can persist in a way. I don't know how long, but yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Things look wretched. I just interviewed Gene Epstein, the former decades-long writer for Barron's magazine, and now he runs the magnificent Soho Forum debate club in Manhattan. I had an interview with him for like 2 hours, and he could have easily got another two. Guy's amazing. He's a force of nature. But we got to talking about money a little bit. He was asking me about my completely irresponsible plans for the future. I don't really play poker anymore. So he's like, "Well, how are you going to make money?" I'm like, "I don't know. I hope this writing and podcasting thing takes off." And then I just laughed. I said, "Well, when you think about it, Gene, money isn't real, and I'm not sure the future is real either." And he goes, "What? What are you talking about?" And you know what I'm talking about. This fiat thing we use as money is a joke. I mean, we are using it by law as a store of value and as a one half of every transaction. It's not barter, but it's a sham, and they inflate it at will. And they tell us they've got us convinced in their government schools that no, that's a good thing. You want us to inflate the currency at a reasonable 2 or 3% a year. Are you kidding me? We're supposed to accept literally being robbed that much, and we're told that you'd need that to facilitate growth in commerce. Otherwise, I don't know, numbers might go down. It's a lie. But anyway, to answer your question, I am convinced, like Gene Epstein, that absent all government interference, I think free association and just the demands of the people engaging in exchange, it would move towards a global money just because it makes the most sense. And I think it would be something like gold that would end up being that, maybe with silver, maybe not. And I also think there will be, well, first of all, if the government just disappeared, you'd have some sort of a Hayekian competition in currency happen for a while. But because of its obvious advantages as a money, I do think it needs to be a commodity, and B, one that satisfies all of those. I'm sure you know the lists of all the things that make a good money, and gold is just great at that. Um, People say Bitcoin is better, and I'm fascinated by Bitcoin, but I don't believe them. I think Bitcoin has all of its oomph because smart tech people got behind it, and it was the first mover. And and the thing it's competing with is so wretched. A thing created by the Fed, a fiat dollar. Yeah, of course, anything but that. But strictly speaking, Bitcoin isn't. It's only kind of scarce. Like the code is open source. We could make Adam Haman coin off the exact same protocols, and it could be adopted. And then, what happens to the value of Bitcoin? And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the network effect will just be so strong and everyone will want to use it, in which case, okay, well, then that's the money. That's the definition. What do people use as the medium of exchange? But I have a sneaking suspicion that absent government control, if people could really look around and figure out the thing that satisfies their needs, I don't think it would be dependent upon, how the nodes are operated or what the miners are up to. And I think they'd search for something that's more really scarce rather than just ones and zeros in a computer network. And you can get, by the way, all of the digital advantages that we want to use in our modern economy with something like gold. I mean, it's like the people who are trying to sell us on the central bank digital currency. Don't you want to be modern? Don't you want to be able to move your money around electronically? Like, oh, we can already do that. We've been able to do that for decades. What are you talking about? You just want more centralized control. And it's kind of the same for Bitcoin. We can move gold around digitally too. That's not an unsurmountable problem. But I'm just speculating. I mean, this is uh, abolish the government and let's see what happens. If I'm wrong, okay, great. I like Bitcoin. That's fine. I just don't. If force me to bet, I'm a betting man. I think something like a commodity will eventually win out and be used most of the time.
Yeah. Well, I definitely agree that if we repeal the legal tender laws and we have a market for money, then we'll be in a better situation. I also, this is very interesting for me that, my dad, he's a gold guy. And so you have like boomers and Gen X people. And I mean, you're a millennial. So, who
I
are
am
more into
officially Gen X.
Uh, but sociologically, they're more into commodity money if
Sure,
they're into alternative forms of money than or
sure,
alternative currencies. Whereas the younger people, Gen Z, my generation, perhaps some millennials too, but even like Gen Alpha, they're like they're not so familiar with the tradition of gold. You know what I mean? They live in an inflationary environment and they already see money as like a card and numbers digitally. So they're more, I think, open to cryptos and Bitcoin and stuff.
for sure.
And I think it's just interesting generationally, like where people kind of look towards the alternative to the fiat currency.
Well, it's all about what you're used to, right? If you've been sort of suspicious of government all your life, you'd go to these freedom conferences, and what are they doing there? They're talking about gold. Gold is the historic real money, and we made a mistake in the early 20th century when you got away from that. And then in 71, when Nixon officially broke all ties from gold for the US dollar. So they're just familiar with that. But I think the truth is universal. And like for people your age, just looking at all the shit coins that are out there. I mean, even Trump and Melania have one for crying out loud. There's some lessons about the virtues of pure commodity money. You don't have to, actually read Mises to get the theory that money had to start out as something that had a market value, and then it got the exchange value piled up on top of it. Just looking around and seeing the rise and fall of all these fraudulent little useless coins. And then if you see that wisdom and then you say, but the one that's above all that is Bitcoin, it's going to have to start making you think, yeah, but what's the difference between Bitcoin really and all these others? This is just a protocol. And I just think maybe it's my age, but I think that money has to have its origins and its base value in commodity value. And I wrestle with the questions like, what if Elon Musk gets out there and captures an asteroid that's completely made out of 12 trillion tons of gold and drags that back and parks it in Central Park? What does that do about this stable source of value, And I just think, yeah, but at least it's real. We just deal with that. It'd be like it would be chaotic, but no more chaotic than discovering a bunch, new gold on Earth. Or like, is it bad when new oil deposits are found? It lowers the value of the current oil deposits, but isn't that good? We just got richer. And since the money is a commodity, even the asteroid scenario just makes us richer. There's just going to be some adjustment that comes from it. But how much of adjustment would there be if people just put all their wealth in Bitcoin and then some new protocol became popular? Wouldn't that be just as chaotic? At least with a commodity money at its foundation, it's something inherently valuable. But let me ask you, you're younger. What do you think about the argument that with Bitcoin, the thing that is inherently valuable in the real world is the protocol, is the network, and that's the baseline valuable thing, just like gold has a baseline value. That's the valuable part. And then sure, we pile on value in the maybe speculation or maybe usefulness in exchange. But at its core, Bitcoin does have a real world value case. It's the network.
Yeah.
Does that argument fly?
Yeah, my personal opinion is that in the short term, Bitcoin can be used as a medium of exchange, but it's not the final evolution of money. It's deflationary. So people are more prone to hold it. I mean, gold is a commodity. It can be inflated, it can also be deflationary, but what's really interesting is this author, Edwin Regal, from like the 19 mid 20th century. He developed this theory of money called the value system, where it's not a commodity and it's not inflationary or deflationary. And then my professor Darren has lectured for us with the Menger Institute on this value system, and it's super fascinating. It's very technical. It's like another evolution of money because money is
Hmm,
still evolving, like society. It's not done evolving.
sure.
So I'm still trying to understand it and wrap my head around it, but it's super interesting. I wish I could do it justice and explain it to you, but I don't want to I don't want to try and fail. Um,
I'll have to get you to send me a link and I'll read about it.
I will definitely. Yeah. So super interesting stuff. In El Salvador, they've been using Bitcoin and it seems to be working. So I'm thinking like if it's an opportunity for people, let's say who don't have access to gold, but they have a phone and they want to buy some Bitcoin, they see inflation's going crazy, they want to hedge against inflation, then like that's what I'm doing. I'm buying Bitcoin, and I know a bunch of people, my generation and other people, buying Bitcoin. If we can use that in the short term to transition from the fiat currencies into like something beyond after Bitcoin, I think that's totally fine. And maybe it is something where gold comes back around and is a, a commodity that's backing whatever monetary exchange systems we have.
I agree. I don't want to come off as anti-Bitcoin. The fact that it exists and it just shoots past governmental and bank barriers like a superhero, I think is magnificent. The unbanked in third world countries have this all if they have access to a phone and a phone signal, all of a sudden they can be banked in a way that they maybe their government is angered the hegemon, so they don't have access to banks or the SWIFT system or whatever. But if you have a phone, again, it's a superpower, and I think it's going to be used during the transition, no matter what. I just don't think it's going to stick around, in the long term. I think that there are some um, just technical problems. Like, correct me if I'm wrong, but don't you need something like the Lightning Network to solve some cost or bottleneck problems? Like, you can't use Bitcoin for everything right away. You need some sort of a clearance mechanism, and I think that's what Lightning does.
Yeah.
Which isn't a knock on Bitcoin. It's just okay. We got this base thing, and then we got this other thing to make it even more operational.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, I'm a fan. I'm fascinated to see what happens. And again, I kudos to taking power away from the hegemon and letting people just move past it. I love that so much.
Yeah.
It
So,
is
yeah.
just real quick. It is nasty that the government like did what they did to Russ Albrecht and threw him in jail. They said it was about the Silk Road and selling drugs online, but it wasn't. The government doesn't like it when you mess with their money.
Yeah.
Here in I wrote about Russ quite a bit, or Ross, sorry. Um, and yeah, here in Vegas, we used to use casino chips. Like you could take it out of Denny's and pay for your breakfast with it. I mean, this is the 80s, 90s, and people just knew. You could take a chip from the Stardust and go spend it down at Caesars, and they don't care. They'll settle later behind the scenes. And once the Treasury Department heard that that was a thing, they rolled the tanks. You can't do that anymore because the government doesn't like it when you start making them look like, oh no, maybe they're not indispensable. Maybe we don't actually need this. And that was just with a token that's based in US dollars, and they still couldn't have it. So yeah, that's why they clamped down on Silk Road, and I'm thrilled. My involvement in the LP, it didn't have too many great end results, but that guy's out of prison, and
Mhm.
he's got a pregnant wife, and I'm just thrilled about that.
Fantastic. So speaking of money and tanks, let's talk about what else monetary policy is connected to, which is foreign policy.
Hmm.
Um, are we at war?
No, because I know how long 12 days is, and that was a long time ago.
That's a great point. Good. You relieved me.
No, we're clearly at war, and I don't think a president who's not Ron Paul and not Thomas Massey or Harry Brown resurrected from the dead. I don't think anybody except those three, in other words, no one who can get elected president has the moral or intellectual fortitude to not stay embroiled in war in the Middle East. Between the pressure coming from the Israel lobby and the military industrial complex, I think they just get their way in the exact same way that the banking lobby and big pharma and big agriculture, I think they just get their way. That's why politics sucks so much. You've got concentrated benefits and dispersed costs, and we can't possibly, as the victim class, organize ourselves enough to not just get robbed. And in this case, get dragged into war. They tell us it's for our own good, but I'm just not seeing it, Matthew. I don't know about you. I don't believe this war is in my interest. I don't have any interests over there. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, we're at war. I think it's going to get worse. I've been pitching a political vision of horror for the future on my show. Can I share it with you so I can depress you?
Okay.
I think Trump can't get out of this. Um, yeah, I think he's captured or he's dumb. So we're just going to get stuck. We stepped in quicksand, we punched the tar baby, and now we're stuck, which means not only are we going to see increased prices because of the increased cost of oil, you can't blow up distribution or production and choke distribution or not have the cost go up. I think the current cost of a barrel of oil is far too low. It does not reflect the circumstances on the ground. I think that only gets worse. And since Americans vote with their pocketbooks, I think the Democrats sweep the Congress in this year in the midterms, and I think that they win the presidency for the same reason, because costs are still going to go nothing but up, and mostly what people vote on is their pocketbook. So we're going to get President Newsom or somebody like that with a democratically controlled Congress, and they are going to unleash all the horror, the leftist, progressive, woke horror that they're famous for. DEI is going to come back. Green agenda is going to come back. The production of fossil fuels is going to get choked off again. So prices are going to get even higher. And since Newsom's last name is not Paul or Massey or Brown either, he's not going to get us out of this trap. So prices are just going to keep going higher and higher. And I think that unless the lefties, the Democrats, use lawfare and change the mechanisms of democracy in this country to make things so fixed that a Republican can't win anymore, if they don't do that, then in 4 or 8 years, you're going to see a right wing populist authoritarian reaction, the likes of which this country's never seen. I don't think you'll actually get President Nick Fuentes, but you'll get someone just like him, a populist who is going to use a mercantilist, an authoritarian. I think we're going to swing back and forth between left wing authoritarianism followed by right wing authoritarianism. And I think, where do you find freedom in that? It just ain't there. And I think our arguments are going to sound more and more specious. It's like, what are you talking about? We need to wrest control from these people. And how do you do that? You need a big honking government to do that. And I guess I think things are going to get worse and worse and worse until the whole system just breaks, and then we'll see where we're at.
Hmm.
Um, and probably it's going to be regional warlord factions or something like that.
I'm curious if you don't mind elaborating on your image of a right-wing authoritarianism, like some more details of what you think that will look like.
I mean, it depends how mad people are. uh, you could see them just rounding up all the people that they found thought were oppressing them and putting them up against the walls. Who the heck knows? Go listen to right wing authoritarian types and see what they think the good vision of a. I mean, you could see racial purity tests. You could see, you know, rolling back female suffrage, repeal the 19th Amendment, just whatever it is, whatever right wingers who aren't libertarians, what do they say they would do if they were in charge? It's stuff like that. It's not pretty. It ain't good. It's not like they're just going to repeal, all the farm subsidies and start reading Rothbard and implementing his economic plan.
Hmm.
So we'll see. It disturbs me that guys like Tucker Carlson, for example, I think their hearts are in the right place in a lot of ways, but their economics is pure populist mercantilism. They don't want free markets. They openly mock free markets. And okay, maybe our markets are crony, but you can't be mad at the free market part and think, oh, well, the way we fix this is enormously high punitive tariffs. And the problem is trade. Trade's not the problem. Our jobs didn't go overseas because trade, globalist trade. They went overseas because government regulation made working here and producing here far too costly, so costly that we'll take the enormous shipping costs over minimum wage laws and EPA laws. And just, how hard it is to start a business in this country? That's why jobs go overseas. That's why businesses go overseas. So, in response to all the lunacy that left wing big government gets us, I think we're going to get right wing big government, and that ain't better. I don't know if it's worse. I mean, they're both terrible. And none of them have libertarianism anywhere near them. So cheers. Good luck with the future. Good luck, son.
Well, Adam, I wanna, I wanna give you some alternative perspective.
Please.
Okay. The first thing I'll say, hopefully as a note of optimism, is that you can't predict the future. So this isn't guaranteed.
For sure.
The second thing is, even if you have Democrats that come into office, I think the 2020s was a really good example of when you had like the closest thing we faced to authoritarianism in the US, and all that pressure woke a lot of people up.
Mm-hmm.
That pressure really, like, if someone has an inclination for freedom, then they're going to begin to look for it. And when they feel that pressure of tyranny or authoritarianism, they're going to look elsewhere. So I think even if we have radical leftism, then I think, the option for states to break away is still there.
It's true.
That's
Even in
that's yeah.
even in 2016, you had prominent California politicians talking openly about secession. I'm like, huh? Okay. You hate Trump that much that you want to secede? Let's talk more. I like that idea. Does it scale?
Yeah, and the pressure from both left or right will influence the other side to want to break away just as much. And the horrible but beautiful thing about the 20th century is that we did witness the rise of massive governments, the rise of democide and people put against the wall. That, like, we can look at that as like this is what you get as a result when you want to get a bigger, larger, more authoritarian governments. And so we have that hindsight, that knowledge. And the other thing too is I feel like my generation, like, we are radicals, both on the capitalist and socialist end, because we've seen this middle of the way interventionism just not work out. I mean,
Right.
it's crazy. So
Right.
people are looking for the alternative. And we don't have this nationalistic energy that probably was more apparent the last century. So I don't think people mind like breaking away the foundational American myths, breaking away from the nation if it becomes something they don't like at all. I mean, even under Trump 2016, people are like, "Not my president." You know what I mean? So, which is fine, obviously. Like,
It's great. It's not mine either. We should learn
yeah,
something for that. Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. I hope you're right. I mean, obviously you have a greater insight on the pulse of younger people than I do. I hope you're right. I do think that people who grew up with the internet have decentralization just in the core of their being in a way that people that grew up without it don't. And I think that's great.
yes,
Um, I got super blackpilled when the COVID restrictions came down and almost nobody resisted. It just broke my heart. I was deeply broken for a couple of years there. Made me want to quit poker and start doing this. Um, but I think you're right in that. I mean, obviously, I'm selling a black-pilled vision of the future that I'm afraid of. I don't think it's the most likely. It's just I'm afraid of it, and it used to be unthinkable. But maybe you're right. And as we break down the American myths, and young people just don't automatically accept whatever the greatest generation thought about what America was, maybe secession will start to become a thing and political decentralization will start becoming a thing in the zeitgeist. I hope you're right.
Yeah,
Because if it's not that, it's going to be Zoran Mamdani. It's going to be let's give socialism a try because this crooked crony thing isn't working. As you say, the third way is there are perils of a mixed economy, and we're experiencing them. So it'll either be freedom and political decentralization, or hey, maybe the Soviets were premature and Chinese, obviously they didn't do it right, but we can do socialism right. I'm very afraid of that.
yeah. Um, I mean, it is interesting, like regarding like socialism in America, Zoran Mamdani, there's a lot of bureaucracy in New York, so it's like how much isn't he already bankrupt? Like, didn't they just spend
Yes, but hey, there's Albany and there's Washington D.C. too. Can't we just make money?
Yeah. I mean, it's we're in a different position than like the Soviet Union was, whereas like in the Soviet Union, they were able to persist for so long because we helped them with their prices because they looked at the Western markets of like how to price things and stuff. If we're the Western market and we socialize and we abolish our money prices and go full government socialism, I don't see how it even lasts long, which, in the short run could be bad, but I don't think it would be something that like lasts long.
Can you imagine a modern American Politburo who's asking like Chat GPT what the prices should be? There are people who probably think that's like a good idea. We don't get rid of the profit motive. That's all waste. No, we got computers now and smart AIs. They can just make things and decide what these capital goods should cost. Who needs? I don't know if
Yeah.
it's true, but I like the thought that the Soviet Politburo were literally looking at the Sears and Roebuck catalog for prices and trying to trying to
Yeah.
coordinate in some way based on that. Is Grok going to be the modern version of Sears and Roebuck catalog? I don't know.
Yeah. Um, but okay. So domestically, I'm more optimistic, but
Good. You should be.
internet,
You're younger. You
yeah.
should be more optimistic.
I think I've just seen too many people be like in my generation, just like, they have this irony that just is like unparalleled to anyone throughout history where they're just like, you're bullshit. Like you have the internet, you have AI, like you already question everything, like especially when a politician who's just an actor is gonna
Yes,
tell you like we have your best intentions. Like no one listens to politics. No one
that's
listens to the
great.
news.
If
Yeah.
your generation is suspicious and skeptical like that, that's great.
Yeah.
That's
No,
no, that's great.
the the flip side is that you also have people who like won't trust politicians, but they will listen to people like Hassan Piker.
Yeah.
And
Oh my God. Oh my God.
it's
How is he so popular? Again, it breaks my heart like the COVID restrictions. How is he so goddamn popular?
he's inflammatory and that's attractive. He's like a bit charismatic and like in a world where actually I think people, especially the younger people from COVID, have been like their spirit has been broken and they're just like perpetually anxious and psychologically terrorized. When they see a person like that, like who's like, "Oh, I'm more radical than the liberal," they think that's the only alternative,
It
you
could
know?
be. I've often suspected, like, if Gen X was raised like free range chickens, there's something, how is the helicopter mom generation being raised? I think that makes people inherently more anxious and more looking to authority figures. And when somebody who's sort of raised in that ethos, not everyone's the same, but when they see a guy like Piker, or maybe who's the right wing version, like Andrew Tate or some nonsense like that,
I mean, maybe Fuentes.
maybe Fuentes, yeah.
Uh,
Charismatic people are a problem. They can be great, but they can also be a problem.
yeah. I mean, yeah, with the helicopter parenting, like even siblings react differently, right? Like one becomes more submissive, another one's like more rebellious
Yeah,
naturally.
our my show is called Haman Nature because it's my last name and it's human nature. Get it? And I talk about that a lot. We don't come into this world with a tabula rasa, blank slate of a brain that could be filled with anything. There's all sorts of deeply evolutionary created structures in there. And one of them, I think the dials are just sort of set for our baseline neuroticism and anxiety and stuff like that. And they can be moved through nurture, but some people are just going to be more anxious than other people because of those set dials. And you're exactly right. which again just makes me wonder, maybe maybe the helicopter parenting won't stick. Like most people rebel against their childhood in ways that are meaningful and ways that are destructive. And maybe that mechanism, that basic human nature mechanism to rebel a little bit will shake off all of the helicopter parenting, big government trusting stuff, and people will just naturally sort of shake free of that, at least on the margin. I hope so.
Mhm.
There's something very resilient about our, about this unit, this basic human unit. It survived a lot, and and as weird as our culture is amazing, of course, but it can also get super weird. The trans nonsense, for example. But there's something about this basic unit that even if we collapse civilization and three-quarters of us die, I think the unit is just resilient, and we're just going to come back. So I guess I'm long-term super white-pilled, but don't listen to me about the short term. I'll
Well,
I'll horrify you.
I mean, okay, let's circle back. Okay, hopefully we covered domestic policy, but international foreign policy, I'm kind of scared to be honest, because it's just uh there's a good book, maybe you're familiar with it, by Michael Glennon called National Security and Double Government. And in it, he explains essentially you have your Madisonian institutions of the legislative, executive, judicial branches. Then after World War II, you had your Trumanite institutions, which is the Joint Chiefs of Staff, NSA, CIA, the Pentagon. And
Say
they,
CIA three times to emphasize how important that damn thing was
yeah.
is.
And he explains that like the staff and cabinet members of the Trumanite institutions like the Pentagon outnumber the executive branch staff members like 60 to 1 or 12 to
Yeah.
1, something ridiculous. So they are a bureaucracy of the military industrial complex. They're the bureaucracy of the Department of War. And like as Yuri Maltsev said, if you had a government butcher in an area, then the butcher would be butchering. So their whole business, their whole job, their whole uh uh meaning is to look for wars they can win. And so they bubble up foreign policy to the executive branch, to Trump. Trump
Hmm.
or the executive branch is just a figurehead. He's really, I don't know if he's really calling the shots. And as much as I would like him to think so, so he can like pull out, at the same time, it's like, yeah, is he handcuffed? Is this just you know, part of like the project of a new American century to overthrow these countries in the Middle East?
Yeah, he's handcuffed, clearly. I mean, I don't think he was lying on the campaign trail. He also wasn't too serious because he's just, a self-aggrandizer. But I don't think he's lying. I think he wants peace. I think he hates war. And I just think he's completely captured by either special interests or special interests plus blackmail, or since the Jeffrey Epstein thing came to the surface, more to the surface than he would like. I think he's protecting his friends and his family. He's protecting relationships. And that means you know he's not the boss.
Mhm.
No U.S. president has been the boss when you consider all these powerful special interests. I mean, they're going to get their way. That's kind of why the American electoral system looks like it does, so that special interests will always get their way. That's why third parties can't get any traction. It's set up structurally, so that can't be the case. There's a reason Ron Paul got his delegates stolen from him in the primary because he was not going to kowtow to special interests. So that's why the joke, no matter who you vote for, you get John McCain because the military industrial complex is enormous and extraordinarily powerful.
Yeah.
So foreign policy, sometimes, like, I think it was probably a mistake that so much of our supply chains got so long that they went, they originated in China, and during COVID that broke, and we prices went way up, and the ships are anyway. I think that in a free market system, I don't think production would have ever gotten that far away from America. I think you needed a huge regulatory strait to drive business away to make it that. So maybe part of this horrible global empire thing breaking down is that capital malformation will break and things will move closer to home. And maybe if that happens, Maybe we get wise and decide we don't need a far-flung empire. I don't know. Britain was able to give up their empire without much of a whimper. That was smart. They turned immediately to socialism, but it was smart to give up your empire without complaining. Maybe we can do that.
Yeah. One thing that Darren has taught me a lot is that all these wars are based off scarcity. Um, Essentially, like they're not about religious ideas. It's just about resources,
Right,
and territory is a part of that.
right.
But the more free market we have, the more division of labor, interconnectedness we have, then we can like reliably trade and exchange with people. But the more like statism, interventionism we have, the more we want to go into protectionism and tariffs, which is like economic warfare that goes to, physical hot warfare and
Every
stuff.
time. I
Yeah.
think I mean, we get more productive every decade, even despite the government. And then they, get bigger and start inflating it away, taxing it away. One of the possible white pill strands is that we innovate our way produce our way out of this horror show. Like, I think the PC revolution helped that a lot. I think the internet revolution helped that a lot. Even Bill Clinton couldn't tax and spend his way out of the productivity gains brought to us by Steve Jobs and Bill Gates. That's why Bill Clinton ran a budget surplus just because, the taxes were that big. He couldn't spend it fast enough. And now we get AI and robotics and whatever massive increases in productivity that gives us. So maybe we can innovate our way, produce our way out of this horror. But all of that stuff does require basic physical inputs, whatever these rare earth materials are, whatever helium is, and why we need that to go through the Strait of Hormuz. I don't understand. So maybe with that aspect, we can't get out of it. But you said most of these wars are about scarce resources, and I'm not sure. I mean, you make a great point. I could steel man that point as well as you can. But there's something about the human psyche that has a lust for domination. And if you have power, you just, gosh darn it, I need to flex this power. And you look like I could flex it on you. So I'm going to go sail over and do that. So I think we need to cure our own negative human impulses. On the other hand, having plenty helps with that. If we're not privated here at home, maybe we won't have a lust to dominate overseas. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think like there is this scarcity aspect of like a country wants more resources and it feels threatened by its lack of abundance. But I do agree that like there is that lust for power. Absolutely. That's a part of human nature, I
It
think.
is.
It's part of that political nature.
I have a, I have been depressing your poor audience. I feel terrible, Matt. But let me give you an ultimate white pill.
Please.
Um, as I said earlier, I think that free markets, private property, voluntary association, and anarchic structure by which we generate security for ourselves and legal principles we live under, I think that is the future of our species. As long as we can keep ourselves from nuking ourselves, to death, such that cockroaches take over the earth, as long as that doesn't happen, I think we end up there. And to give intuition to that point, I'll just remind everybody we are a ridiculously young species, preposterously young. We just came down out of the trees, basically. Look how much has changed since the Industrial Revolution, which was not long ago at all. So we're figuring things out. We drive ourselves crazy with social media and the internet, but look how brand new that thing is. I've only had a smartphone for like 15 years. All the stuff that's making us crazy is new, including political institutions. We're new at this. But Rothbard is right. Hoppe is right. Kinsella is right. I think we end up under anarchy because nation states are just wrong. They're as wrong as tribal chieftainism is wrong, as monarchical kings or religious zealot theocracies are wrong. And I think we are a species built to, I mean, all species are. We're built to get to what our human nature, what's appropriate for our nature, and we will get there. We're just super, super young. We're toddlers, and when you look at what we're doing, it shows, right? Look at the freaking Middle East. Yeah, of course we're toddlers. We're throwing temper tantrums, but I think we'll get there. As long as the knowledge we built up so far in libertarian political philosophy and economics, Austrian economics, as long as we don't lose that, as long as the Library of Alexandria doesn't get burned, so to speak, should be hard now. I think you need the polls to flip, right? For all the digital archives to get destroyed. I think we'll be okay. It's just toddlers go through growing pains and we're going to go through some growing pains, but we'll get there.
Yes, that was beautifully said, and I completely agree. That's why I'm very optimistic of the future. It's gonna be so
You are,
beautiful.
man. God bless you. You're one of the most optimistic ever since I met you. Goofy smile on your face all the time. You're just a happy-go-lucky guy. I love it. Good for
Thank
you.
you. I
Good for
mean,
you.
I think just learning about these ideas in Austrian economics, it's so
It's empowering, right? Isn't it
yes.
uplifting? That's how I felt. I was, I guess, 20 when I first read Ayn Rand for the first time, and a shift was made, and then it just got better and better ever since then. And yeah, I can see it in you. These ideas are enlightening in the best sense of the word.
Yes, thank you. So, we talked about foreign policy, we talked about domestic policy. I want to talk about Adam, yourself, your policy. I've seen you've been very prolific in how you've been growing and your brand, your channel, your writing, your podcasting. And I want to ask you because we are an intellectual and educational institute, how do you do it? What keeps you going?
Well, I think my own growth is painfully slow. And the reason is I love writing. I love these ideas. I love podcasting. I hate the promotional aspect. And really, that's the most important part. So the growth I'm getting is just super organic, super natural. Someone will see me somewhere and click and find me and do all the stuff. But to answer your question, what keeps me at it is the fact that I love this stuff so much. I either give my audience, go to hamannature.substack.com. That's Haman nature.substack.com. You will get from me either an article or a podcast 5 days a week. And when I get up in the morning and I don't have anything written, I'm champing at the bit to get in there and think about something and write it out. I just love this stuff. As you can probably tell, goofy hornets on my face notwithstanding, I just love talking about these ideas with people that are excited to talk about them with me. I just love everything about it. And so, despite the fact that I can't pay the bills, and it's work, I'm excited to do the work. I just love it. I love everything about it. And I've been a libertarian since 1990 or 91, depending on how you count. So I've read all the stuff, I've absorbed these ideas. I'm not an expert in any of it, but I'm a generalist and a pretty high level generalist. And as much as I love the economics and the politics, I also love studying our nature. What is human nature? What are we? At least a quarter or a third of my channel is about that too. Heck, I even talk about culture because that's part of us. Um, so I don't know, man. I just love it. Eventually, I'll go broke and have to go back to the tables and start check raising idiots for a living, but I don't want to. I'd rather do this. I feel like I've loved poker. It's been better than having a boss all these years, but I mean, it doesn't scale. You can only play one hand at a time. Now, when I go back and play, I just kind of feel like I'm just wasting time. I'd rather be trying to make the world a better place. I like to think I make the table I'm at a little bit better. I crack jokes and I say smart and funny things, but it's better with a microphone, man.
Yeah. Can I ask you about your writing process, like how you approach it in your day, how you go about it, what you're thinking about?
Have you ever tried meditating?
Hmm.
Well, the cool thing is these thoughts just pop in, right? And you're not trying to think about anything. That's the whole point. Concentrate on your breathing, and god damn, these thoughts just come. We don't understand the nature of our consciousness in the slightest bit. We sure as hell don't know where these thoughts come from. Everyone's got a million theories. Some are based on, an atomistic conception of the universe, deterministic, and others, look at things from a different level of analysis. And all I know is that I've been writing almost every day for over 2 years now. And I just never run out of ideas. They just come. They just something interesting is happening, and I feel like I've got sort of a unique take, and so I write about it. And the wellspring is just it percolates up. I never run out. If I ever did, I'd have to stop doing this. So the process, man, I don't know. I get up and the world is interesting and something is interesting enough for me to write about it. And I can't explain how. It's not like I'd love to tell you, man, well, yeah, I've got this curated feed on social media and elsewhere in news sources. And then I look through all of that. And one of those 50 things is something I'm going to, but it isn't like that at all. Something just comes to me and I don't know how. So I can't give advice except um, be interested in a lot of things. And if you are, those mental connections will come together in ways you probably can't predict. And an interesting podcast or article will come into being.
Excellent. I think that's great advice. Like it's almost serendipitous. You
It
really
is. It
yeah.
really is.
Yeah. Excellent. I don't know. I guess when you mentioned about human consciousness, are you I'm not too familiar with like Jungian consciousness, but I think it's interesting. Are you kind of into that or like
I've studied that a tiny bit. Um, I think the behaviorists and the Jungians and the Freudians, those are probably the three main psychoanalytic structures. My opinion is they are all useful frames of reference and they are to be all understood and more, if we can think of any, and employed where they look like they are useful. But I think it's a big mistake humans make to try and think there's one truth, one useful paradigm, and that's the one we're going to stick with come hell or high water. I think that's just dogmatism and almost always wrong. I write and talk a lot about a humble epistemology. I think we need to not be so certain of the things we think, because again, we're a young species. We hardly know anything. I think it's very useful to understand different mental paradigms on multiple academic disciplines and sort of cycle through them and see which ones seem to be gaining traction in any particular instance, and then pursue that. Always keeping your mind open for new evidence and your paradigms malleable, such that if something doesn't seem to be giving you answers, you switch. And if for people who think I'm equivocating, an example I like to give, the sort of the difference between free will people and determinists. It's like if you're watching a baseball game, you could analyze that at the atomic structure and down to the electron. And if you understand anything about quantum mechanics, liar, no, you don't. You could try to analyze it that way. It's not going to be all that interesting. But if you go a few levels up and you think, oh, these are teleological beings that have purposes, they want to score runs, they want to get the other player out. Well, now you got a baseball game. And the very first thing when you crack open Ludwig von Mises's Human Action is the action axiom. It's the Hornets. And yeah, that's not, if you have a deterministic worldview, that's not going to make the slightest bit of sense. But if you actually want to understand humans, as you should, it's the perfect way to analyze praxeological actions, all actions. Um, so yeah, don't get dogmatic about your framework. You need to be able you need a lot of different lenses to look through to understand this world or to even begin to understand it. So yeah, epistemic humility. If I'm certain of one thing, it's that you need that.
nice. That's the paradox of epistemic
Right?
humility. Yeah.
Right? No, I'm certain of that.
Excellent. Adam, is there anything else you would like to add to the podcast?
Just that I love, when I first met you, 2018, I think, at
Yes.
Mises University in Alabama, I thought this kid has got a future. I just loved your attitude. You're smart as hell. And as smart as you were always listening. I was like, why won't this kid just say some shit? I know he's thinking some shit. So I'm impressed that you landed where you landed. I think that's great. I love how optimistic you are. And as for myself, I'd love to come back on. Um, Calls to action. Go visit that Substack of mine. I think you'd like it. Subscribe. hamannature.substack.com. And you can catch my podcast on all podcatchers, Haman Nature, Haman, and also my YouTube show. Please go there, subscribe, like videos. It's just YouTube at Haman Nature. Put it in quotes or put my first name Adam in. Otherwise, you get 500 instances of a really sweet Michael Jackson video. But I'm not the Michael Jackson video. I'm a different thing. So yeah, check me out. If you like this interview, you'll probably like the stuff I put out. I think it's pretty interesting.
Yeah. Adam, thank you. That means a lot and that warms me. And it's a pleasure to know you and to talk to you. And we'll definitely have you back on the podcast. We'll do some more podcasting. Maybe we can have you for a guest lecture talking about
Oh
human
wow,
nature. We
that'd be
definitely,
something.
yeah, we emphasize the importance of human nature and understanding human society and economics and the world.
Well, this has been great, man.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you, Adam.
Thank you.